right, good morning. Welcome to Market Pulse this Wednesday. And today's conversation, we want to have a conversation largely around price controls. Is it a good thing? How does it affect you as a consumer? How does it affect businesses across the country? And to help me with this conversation is acting CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that is Tobias Alando. Tobias, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, so first things first, when you hear price controls, does it make you jittery, or what antennas go off in your mind?
Just from the word control, it means there's somebody or some people seated somewhere who will govern, direct how you price your commodities. Mm-hmm. And that alone sends a lot of concerns, particularly to the industries, because we are a free market economy. And having a free market economy, we have the opportunity to set prices for certain commodities based on the production cost. If you set and fix prices for the commodity, you inhibit a lot of manufacturers from the competition platform. Because if we are all fixed our prices on specific items, then it inhibits competition. I would want to lower my prices because probably I got my raw materials cheaper. I would want to lower my prices based on what I've produced. So having price control, as much as it seems like a good thing from the government perspective, to enable consumers afford commodities like wheat, flour, sugar, and the rest. I think we need to let the market forces at play and not control the prices. In a system where there is price control, you inhibit even additional investors. Nobody would want to come to a market where it is basically controlled. But if it is a free market, then even the price reductions will just work in itself.
All right, so one of the things that we are getting from this bill is that it is currently targeting essential commodities. And I want to know, from a manufacturer's perspective, how then does that affect business?
You need to look at it from the point of, how do I produce these essential commodities? I import or I get raw materials at a certain cost. My costs in terms of production, energy, labor, all have to be included there. So the bill states that the government, through the ministry, will form a committee that will review the prices, and that committee will go ahead and give incentives, which we are not clear about what incentives will come. That alone inhibits the manufacturer from having a play, an open play in terms of market, an open play in terms of pricing, and it will not be very, very good for the consumer ultimately. Because right now, consumer needs to have options. I can afford a certain product at a different price. I can afford a certain product at a different price. When you restrict it, then consumer will not have options. And in fact, it infringes the competition laws in the country. Because if we set prices, we are actually infringing our constitution.
It's interesting that you're still talking about consumers, because even the proposers of this amendment, one of the things that they're saying is we want to protect consumers from exorbitant pricing of commodities. And yet here you have, from a manufacturer's perspective, also speaking that in the long run, the same consumers are not going to have options.
Definitely, they're not going to have options. You saw the case where the government tried to import oil, cooking oil. Did that affect the price? It did not affect the price. Did the consumer benefit? They did not benefit. So it needs to be left to the business to do business, and government just to run their business. In fact, if the government wants to reduce the prices of those essential commodities, then they should review the taxation regulations in this country. that alone, if they say now we are focusing on essential commodities and we want to reduce the prices, then reduce the taxes around those essential commodities. Price will largely reduce.
And let's talk about the question around quality. How does this price control then affect the quality of production by manufacturers?
When I'm producing an item, I'm looking at the markup. So if there are style of package that I need to package the material, the item I'm producing, or additives that needed to be added there, and I cannot afford them because of the price control, then that will definitely affect our quality. If we are using a certain raw material to produce a good that you want to sell that is under price control, I will go for a cheaper raw material to just fit within the margins.
All right, because again, there's a question therein around supplies and the supply chain that might be affected by some of these controls. And I just want to understand, when you look at the question around raw materials particularly, how then will they be affected?
We import the raw materials from different markets,
from
Asia, from China, from Ukraine, for example, for wheat. And through those different markets, it comes different pricing. So it will not be standard. So if today I imported, for example, wheat from Ukraine, and the price was much higher, and someone else imported from India, and the price was quite lower, then we come and produce, then price is fixed.
Again, when you look at price controls in Kenya, one of the things that the proponents of this amendment are going to say is, we have seen price controls work on fuel particularly, and they want now to extend that model to other commodities. And I just want to know from where you sit, what is the net effect of that in the long run?
I think comparing fuel in terms of price control vis-a-vis essential commodity is not a very good comparison. Fuel has very few people who import for it now to be controlled. Essential commodities, we have various players, and the process that also goes through manufacturing and producing those essential commodities, it's quite different. It involves a lot. There are other costs of production that are involved, unlike fuel, which is maybe limited processing. But for essential goods, we have production costs that are involved, and through the production costs, it is expensive. The cost of logistics, the cost of electricity, cost of labor. So if you calculate all that, and then you want to impose price control, you are not addressing the main issue, because you are just inhibiting innovation, you're inhibiting expansion of business who are interested in producing the essential commodity.
All right, now one of the things that you mentioned when we started this conversation is the impact of price controls on competition. And I want to understand, from a manufacturer's standpoint, we have, let's say, two steel manufacturers producing the same item, using the same raw materials, and yet here we have a scenario where the prices are controlled. What impact does that then have on the final product and the final cost that consumers have to pay?
In essence, in certain phases you'll make losses, certain phases you'll make profit, depending on where you got your raw material, if the prices are fixed or prices are controlled. So you will find a sense where you, as a producer, you are taking in the losses just to maintain or to keep afloat in your business. But again, what they're trying to do, if you look at it in essence, is an infringement of our regulations, because there is a Competition Act that we passed in 2020. And through the Competition Act, we are not supposed to fix prices for commodities. So already from where I sit, this is going to bring a lot of judicial review in regards to the Price Control Act that they are proposing, bill.
Just looking in terms of employment and job creation, what is the impact of this bill, particularly to manufacturers who are then job creators?
Yes.
And what does it portend for Kenyans who are looking for jobs within the manufacturing space?
So it will definitely inhibit expansion of business, because when you do price control, you restrict players to coming into the market. And no new investor will definitely come to a market that has price control. So we don't see a likelihood of many investors coming in based on that bill. But if you open the market, it's like opening up an economy. Everyone would want to compete. And once everyone to compete, the rule of supply and demand apply. And the prices will definitely reduce, but not the government controlling the prices. That doesn't work. What the governments need to do is definitely just provide incentives for these industries. Once you provide incentives and say those essential commodities, these are the incentives that play, please consider reducing your prices, and that will happen.
I'm guessing the thinking behind this law is trying to ensure that, first of all, there's predictability in terms of pricing of commodities. But then a question that a lot of consumers then would be asking is, what are some of the metrics or some of the areas that you factor in before deciding the final price of a commodity?
We all produce in different counties. We produce in Nairobi, we produce in Kisumu, some sell to Mandera and Wajir. If you control the prices and say the goods that are produced here, the price is 20 shillings. By the time I take it to the far corners of this country, it can't be 20 shillings. Who will factor the logistics related costs that are attributed to these commodities? So those are the reasonings we need to have, because ultimately price control may not work. The same items that you fix prices on may be sold different prices. So it will rise into what we call black markets. Insurgence of black markets, where people now want to say, I'll sell it at this price and not follow the price control rules.
Because the other argument that we have had is, why is it then that Chinese products that are imported into the country, why are they cheaper than products that have been manufactured here in the country?
How much is the cost of electricity in China? How much is the cost of labor in China in comparison to Kenya? They are quite cheaper. Their volumes are huge. They have the right technology. They have government incentives. So if our country wants to go that way, then look at the incentives, look at the labor, look at the cost of electricity, look at logistics, and you'll be able to address price issues in the country.
All right, so Tobias, again, for a lot of the consumers who form largely the majority of our audience, I want to know, because there are those who would think this is a good thing for us as consumers. And I just want you to explain it to them why this might not be necessarily such a good thing for consumers.
So this, from the face value of it, it looks good, but it is not sustainable. It will lead to closure of industries, and people will lose their jobs because of the inability of companies to expand because of the controls. So that is a major concerns that we have. We support the issue of reducing the cost of essential commodities, and the only way that we propose out of this is government looking at the tax regime, government reducing incentives for essential commodities, introducing incentive for the essential commodities, and definitely prices will go down.
All right, so how further back does it push the government's proposals or target of getting manufacturing as manufacturing contribution to GDP to 20%? How far back does it push it?
This will definitely be a drawback, because unpredictable business environment is one of the major drawbacks for the GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector. If we sit and just think about regulations that will inhibit expansion and growth of the industries, regulations that will make us not have more investments, then our ambition to grow our manufacturing contribution by 20% by 2030 will be a pipe dream. And therefore, for me, where I see it, the government just needs to consider the opportunities in terms of incentivizing manufacturing of essential commodities.
All right, so there are manufacturers that I believe would say, I do not necessarily produce commodities that, let's say, are considered basic commodities, and they would not be interested in what's going on with the bill. But what is your message to those manufacturers who feel, I am disconnected from these price controls?
It will definitely hit you because it starts with essential commodities, then next it will go to other products. So the moment you allow it, it will definitely touch everyone. The government will say we want to control cement production, for example, or steel production, or furniture production in this country. So we are introducing price control. That will not be good for business.
Yeah.
It will stay for business.
All right, so in closing, just what is your message to the legislators who are working on this bill? What is their way out? What is the alternative to price control?
So to the legislators who are working on this bill, I think our consideration as an association is to ensure that the essential goods are affordable, or goods are affordable to the country. And the only way out is to consider incentivizing production in this country and review the tax regime, identify what really stifles manufacturing and the growth of manufacturing in this country. Once we identify those unpredictable related policies, then definitely manufacturing sector will grow, employment will happen, then costs of products will definitely, naturally reduce.
So does this then increase the imports that are coming into the country, or does it increase our share of export?
Price control will not increase our share of export. It will stifle because we are controlled in terms of our pricing. So it will stifle our share of export. Other countries who have what we call special arrangements or incentives will definitely consider to dump into our market because they can produce at a lower price than what we can produce. So they will dump our products here, and we'll end up closing our manufacturing companies if we are not really considered.
All right, and of course, definitely no one wants to see the manufacturing sector close down or even a reduction in terms of their output. And of course, currently we know that the manufacturing sector is still struggling at less than 10% contribution to the GDP.
Correct.
Tobias Orlando, thanks so much for making time to speak to us.
Thank
you for making time to watch this episode. Remember, all the episodes will be airing on Hot 96 on Wednesdays, and you can catch the full conversation on Citizen Digital. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Market Pulse. Let's do this again, same time, same place, next.